Hello, my name is Adam, and today we are going to review with you another horrible case before starting the story. I want to apologize for my bad English. I'm not a native speaker, but I'm trying my best for you guys. Thank you for your understanding. Tina Thomas was far more anxious than Gabe Watson, her fiancé. Like her future husband, Tina was 26 years old at the time. This was her third significant relationship, her second try at getting married, and her first attempt at starting a family with a lover. The marriage between Tina McCulloch and Scott McCulloch ended in failure. The young people's relationship was fine, but Tina's mother was against the wedding, which Scott did not like. She did not make any specific claims, but like any mother, she wanted a better and happier life for her daughter, and Tina herself was still very young at the time. For this reason, the couple soon parted, and the hope of a shared future vanished. The couple's second attempt to get married to Stan Mark failed, and Tina's parents played no part in the relationship. The couple could not overcome the first three-year crisis and finally parted by mutual consent on Christmas Eve at a celebration of pals Tina and Gabe Watson meet. We can't claim that it was love at first sight. Rather, the relationship was developed more as mutual support following a recent split. Granted, this may not seem like the happiest reason to begin dating again, but 2 years later, Gabe proposed to Tina. After learning from painful experience, she said that she could not go ahead without her parents' approval. In 2003, Gabe made the decision to propose on Valentine's Day, charmingly and romantically appealing to Tina's parents. However, Tina's father was away, so the dinner was rescheduled for the following day. On February 15th, at the supper, Watson announced his intention to live hand-in-hand with Tina for the rest of his life. The father of the bride then asked the groom, in an apparently straightforward inquiry, "Does he love?" Upon hearing Tina Gabe's schoolboy-like stammer, his father assumed that her reaction was typical of someone embarrassed by strangers. He then posed the same question to his daughter, who, surprisingly, did not directly respond. Instead, she started her speech by expressing her fear of being alone at the age of 26. The father pondered for a while before blessing the young ones. Getting ready for a wedding requires a lot of time and work. And while Tina was thinking about how to dress for her guests and the entire wedding, Gabe was only thinking about the honeymoon. He didn't give a damn about how his future wife wanted to spend her vacation because he had already planned everything for her. His plan was to go diving at the Great Barrier Reef, which is located in the Pacific Ocean near Australia, and first to see the sunken ship, the Townsville Titanic, which sank back in 1911. The problem was that Tina, unlike Gabe, even though Gabe was completing a rescue diving course and had already completed over 50 dives, he was still an experienced scuba diver. Of course, it wasn't in a pool. "If you don't learn to dive by our honeymoon, I'm warning you right away. You're staying home walking the dog or pruning roses in the garden. You're not going anywhere with me," Gabe said. Tina was left with no choice. In fact, Gabe took out a loan to pay for her fiancé's studies and purchase her own equipment because the initial teacher Tina had taken lessons from was dissatisfied with her abilities, and even the diving instructor quickly gave Tina credit, but not before pointing out that Tina does everything under the stick to appease her future husband. On October 11th, the young couple finally got married, and 2 days later they flew to Australia, spending $10,000 on a trip that gave them for the wedding. It should be noted that Gabe dedicated a portion of their honeymoon to Tina. The instructor warned Gabe that his fiancée had absolutely no skills for open ocean swimming, and he became infuriated. They strolled about Sydney and went to the zoo and aquarium. Employees of the diving company will tell you that, although Tina was excited at first, her excitement turned to sadness as they got closer to visiting the Great Barrier Reef. On October 21st, they flew to Townsville and in the evening boarded a boat to one of the most beautiful places on Earth, a diver's dream. However, even Gabe, who had completed courses and had experience behind him, could hardly understand the equipment as if he saw it. Gabe, as I mentioned, helped his wife organize the equipment they had purchased back in the U.S. He then went to get the tanks they needed to rent and took an 11L tank for himself. Although such tests should be conducted separately, he nevertheless assisted Tina in passing the exam before diving. When the instructor offered Tina his assistance underwater, she declined. It was also noted in the dive log that there was a strong current that day. This historical moment should not be overlooked, and gave his wife an 8½ L tank, which was dangerous given Tina's experience, or lack thereof, that it was impossible to descend to the Townsville Titanic from the first time. Tina initially requested more cargo because she was unable to dive to a depth, and Gabe initially malfunctioned the underwater computer, which determines the required diving and ascent speed, as well as the amount of oxygen in the cylinders. Eventually, the computer did function, and they attempted again. The wreck was 49 feet deep, and Tina was the first to submerge Gabe, who was swimming behind her. According to Gabe, at first everything was fine. At some point, though, Tina stopped waving at me and indicated that she wanted to go up. I knew right away that she was simply panicking because that's what she used to do. By the time we got halfway up, I decided to calm her down and stay with her at the same depth for a while without going any deeper, so that she could grow accustomed to the pressure. I realized that Tina was sinking at that point, so I tried to hold her down with her belt, but she swung her arm so forcefully that it knocked the mask off my face. It didn't take long for Tina to get too far away from me, so I decided to go back to the surface and ask the lifeguards for assistance. On the way, I met another swimmer who had a narrow set of eyes, but he ignored my calls for assistance. Yes, there were 2 Asian men with them at depth, but neither of them corroborated Gabe's claims about the other divers all claimed, when questioned by police, that Gabe could have saved his wife, but he simply did not. Additionally, this tragic incident occurred at the very beginning of their dive, so Gabe had enough oxygen in his tanks to swim to the bottom and return to the surface. Computer readings confirmed that Gabe did attempt to swim after his drowning wife for a while, but he eventually gave up the attempt very quickly. Although the ascent to the surface itself was not an emergency. As soon as the ship's rescuers discovered what had transpired, they immediately entered search for Tina and discovered her very quickly, but it was too late. Tina was found lying on her back at a depth of 82 feet with her eyes open beneath her mask. Her body was immediately raised, and on the yacht's deck, they attempted artificial respiration on her for about 40 minutes, but it was unsuccessful. The same firm employees claimed that during the entire time, Gabe avoided getting close to his wife and instead stood someplace apart, allowing witnesses to mistakenly sniff his nose. The young man even grinned and engaged in card games with other passengers while traveling to the seaside. Gabe refuted this in court, but Tina's autopsy later revealed that not all of it was evident. Yes, there are bruises on the neck and traces of blood in the nostrils, which is common at the 82T depth where Tina's body was found. There are also high levels of drugs like ibuprofen and paracetamol in the blood, despite the fact that these medications are used to treat seasickness. There are no traces of alcohol in the blood. Tina's death was reported to be due to drowning, although there was some fluid seen in her lungs. It's probable that Tina did not have enough oxygen when she drowned. Tina's equipment was... The investigation was taking a while. In addition to Tina's parents' refusal to accept the events as a tragic accident, Gabe realized the detectives were looking for him. They wanted to see their son-in-law in the dock, if not as their daughter's murderer, then at least as a man who had failed to assist her. During the first interrogation, the police noticed that the suspect was in shock, crying, laughing, twitching, and asking to call his father, who complained of pain in his ears and pleading with him to inform his wife's parents regarding the catastrophe. After being freed late at night, Gabe went to the company's yacht on the reef and requested a night's lodging, claiming that their 2-day trip should have lasted longer, but that because of his wife's death, they had only been there for 24 hours. He also requested a refund of half the dive fee. In reality, he never saw the sunken ship. On October 24th, Gabe's mother flew to Townsville to support her son and assist him in finding legal counsel. That same day, at Gabe's request, they visited the motel. Gabe wanted to see his wife one last time because the husband was still considered a possible suspect. Detective Lawrence later used these words against Gabe in court. At the morgue, you told Tina you didn't mean to hurt her. What did you mean by that? Detective Lawrence will ask his question. The morgue employee called the detective who was in charge of the case. In theory, Gabe could have hidden some evidence, but the heartbroken husband only sobbed, held his wife's cold hand, and begged her forgiveness, unaware that the police officer was standing outside the door at the time recording him on a tape recorder. Gab told the same tale about his hurting ear once more while driving home with his wife's body during an Oakland layover. The investigation revealed that he sought medical attention on the airport premises and was detained there for assessment. This was done on purpose to avoid seeing Tina's father, but divers will attest that ear issues are a fairly common condition among divers. On November 5th, Tina's burial was performed, and Gabe still needed to meet with the deceased's father. Almost in full front of everyone, Gabe removed his wife's wedding band and placed it on his ring finger over hers. He also handed over his earrings right away, passed to his in-laws. When Gabe would be asked later in the trial, "Did you really take your wife's jewelry off during the funeral?" Watson and the Thomas family never saw each other again. Gabe would simply smile and shrug. Everyone had different opinions about Gabe. Some called him a tyrant and a desperate man, while others said that this fat, funny man was actually quite a kind man. However, everyone agreed that Gabe and Tina were not happy, or at least they didn't seem to be. I don't think I could have done it later. During a family meal in February, Tina told her father something that her friends verified. Tina's union with Gabe on the 15th was only a means of preventing her from dying alone, and that fear ultimately caused her to perish on the seabed. The victim who passed away just before their honeymoon also admitted to a friend that her husband had forced her to sign a beneficiary form and insure his life at a higher interest rate in case of death. The insurance agent verified her testimony, and the cab driver who took the newlyweds to the yacht was also questioned. Tina wept the entire ride, but her husband ignored her, until finally, Tina's friend Amanda Phillips revealed another story that shed light on the true nature of the couple's relationship. This damned jerk recorded Tina urinating in the bathroom, edited it, and put it on a tape of them celebrating Christmas. That would have been okay, but he turned it on during a general viewing attended by a full house of guests, laughing like a horse as they all twiddled their fingers around their temples and tried to explain to him that it was a very low act and that I was putting crosses on my fingers to prevent Tina from getting the idea to marry him while taking off jewelry during a funeral. May appear to be a terrifying and derogatory gesture on Gab's behalf, but during the 2008 trial, the jury saw incredibly unsettling video of Watson going to Tina's grave, removing all of the flowers and transporting them away. The flowers were later discovered in a neighboring trash can. The missing flowers were noticed by Tina's father, who set up a hidden camera in the next row among the monuments to catch the thief. He was shocked to see Gabe on the tape and was furious about the action in court. Gabe's defense was that he and his wife had talked about the death of one of their own, and Gabe said that Tina drowned while he was trying to put a mask on her face. It turned out that it was impossible to put the mask on underwater by yourself unless you used another source of air, in this case, Tina's oxygen. The extreme honeymoon and the lack of flowers on the grave was her request, which sounded very strange and unlikely. Who knows how long the search for evidence would have dragged on. Gabe was taken into custody by Australian authorities in late November 2008, and on June 5, 2009, his trial got underway. Gabe entered a plea deal, guilty but solely for failing to save his wife. As a result, he was accused of negligent homicide and, once his sentence was served, was given an 18-month jail sentence. After his wife died, Gabe went back to the U.S., but a year later, a U.S. court charged him with first-degree murder. His lawyer attempted to defend his client by placing all the blame on the diving company, claiming that its employees neglected to ensure the safety of tourists and are now afraid of losing their license. As a result, the entire industry is trying to place the blame on the unhappy husband, who has already completed his sentence in another nation, received a $33,000 payout from the insurance company, but Gabe spent much more on lawyers and additional knowledge. Despite this, the prosecution persisted in claiming that Gabe's spending was necessary because the husband could not assume that he would not be believed. Additionally, the prosecutor refused to acknowledge the fact that Gabe, who had a degree in drowning rescue, was unable to save his wife when he testified before the jury. 7 years have passed since the tragedy, and I can only understand my late wife's parents. No matter how much I kneel before them or beg for their forgiveness, they will never forgive me. You often hear the phrase, "I can't imagine what it's like to lose a child," but I've never heard anyone say, "I can't imagine what it's like to die." When I think back on that terrible day, the public pounced on me, accusing me of murder. There wasn't a single person who looked me in the eye and said, "Yes, I understand how bad you feel, but it's not your fault." Instead, everyone just wants me dead. Lose a wife, especially on a honeymoon. If I can be accused of anything, it's that I didn't try hard enough to save Tina. However, I've already paid the price for that. Maybe you all would have been satisfied if I had drowned with my wife 7 years ago, but I was afraid to die because I thought I wouldn't be able to rise above the bottom. I just wanted to live as long as I wanted to live. And even though there was no evidence of Gabe's guilt, the jury found Gabe not guilty. What do you guys think Gabe was responsible for Tina's death? Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing and unexpected videos.